Welcome to a very special week of Dan Really Likes Wine. It's the show's birthday. For a year I've been sitting mostly in the cellar, occasionally in part of Greece or Scotland, and tasting a variety of largely South African wine. It's been a terrific year, 200 odd wines that I've tasted, and tasting those wines, enjoying them, has taught me a number of things. It's taught me that we've got some extraordinary winemakers in South Africa, very passionate people who make some wonderful, wonderful wine. It's also taught me about the variety we have here, not just in terms of the geography. We found some unusual corners of South Africa in which to bring some wine to you, but also the types of varietals. There's a lot of fun being had with some slightly quirky combinations and unusual varietals. And then, a most important thing is that South Africa's wine is as good, if not better, than any wine anywhere else in the world. And if you throw in cost, thanks to the strength of the rand, there is no better place to be buying and drinking wine than right here in South Africa. And so, to celebrate, I'll be paying tribute to a few people who have helped along the way to get Dan Really Likes Wine up and running through the most celebratory of mediums, bubbles. And I've got 4 South African Cab Classiques that I've been storing for the last month or two to try out. I haven't tasted any of them yet, but it's as good a reason as any to have a party. And the first of those comes from part of the world that I first discovered wine in South Africa, Franschhoek, and some rosé from Haute Cabriere. If you remember from when we had Haute Cabriere on the show before, months back, I have a link of sorts to this estate just above the slopes of Franschhoek. Achim van Arnhem, the erstwhile cellarmaster, went out with my mother briefly in the early 1800s. And so I could have been the heir to a Cab Classique empire. The heir instead is Tachuan van Arnhem, who I've met I think 3 dozen times, and he introduces himself on each occasion, but that's probably because he's far too busy thinking about the next vintage of the extraordinary bubbles that the Pierre Jourdain label, the Haute Cabriere estate, are famous for. This isn't the top end, this is the reasonably run-of-the-mill Belle Rosé, but don't let run-of-the-mill detract from the quality. The Haute Cabriere sparkling wines, Cab Classiques, always exceptional, and this with rosé, particularly as we come into summer, is a good way in which to start the Dan Really Likes Wine birthday celebrations. Well, the smoking gun effect at the start suggested it was a beautiful, fresh, lively bottle, and so it proves. Very zesty, slightly darkish feel, and a really nice effervescent rosé to get going with. And a very nice effervescent rosé to pay tribute to Rose and her husband Michael Jourdain, because that's my first thank you of this week's episode. It was Michael Jourdain who bullied me into getting Dan Really Likes Wine started. He was at a wine evening I was hosting, suggested there was a space for this and that I might be the person to fill that space. Didn't stop emailing me or phoning me till I'd got it up and running. And now we are a year into Dan Really Likes Wine. The former banker now spends his time running around Bartony barefoot, tasting his wine. He's also inspired a lot of people, me amongst them. So Michael Jourdain, cheers. Round 2 of the bubbles, and it's off to De Zalze and the Kleine Zalze wine. It's quite an operation at Kleine Zalze. The golf course, De Zalze, is delightful, one of the finest closing stretches of any course in the country. Beautiful par 5 on 17, some terrific water holes, and a great 18 risk and reward if you can hit it long enough to get it onto the green. There's a chance to finish with an eagle. I've never done it, but one day. There's also an outstanding restaurant. Terroir has been celebrated for as long as I've been in South Africa as one of the top restaurants in the country, and rightly so. But their wine operation has also been enormously successful. They export to 20 or so countries around the world. You'll find De Zalze wines, Kleine Zalze wines popping up all over the place. And this is one of the ones that you'll see fairly regularly. It's the Method Cab Classique. They're a brut sparkling wine, and this from the estate just outside of Stellenbosch. Great golf, great food, and great wine. And that's the classic in Cab Classique. It's the kind of finish you're used to on the brut that we make a lot of and make so well in South Africa. Delightful sparkle to it. tiny little bubbles coming through, and those just dance across the palate most welcomely. And it adds to our cause for celebration. And the first toast was to Michael Jordan. Well, this one is to a number of people, including another Mike. There have been a lot of guys in the wine industry who've been very supportive of Dan Really Likes Wine. Mike Ratcliffe amongst them, marketer supreme, and the man behind Warwick, Villafonte, and the Cape Wine Auction, and then a whole pile of other people in the wine industry. And I can't go through all of them, but guys like Big Rob out at Haute Espoir, Kevin Arnold's been fantastic, Ken Forrester been great, sending through wine and doing so very happily. A whole lot of winemakers have been in touch, had me for lunches. Jonathan Grieve at Avondale had a great time with the Finlaysons out in Hemelanada Valley, Caroline at Creation. So all those people in the wine industry who've helped out, who've given me some encouragement, sent me some wine and given a little constructive criticism, which is always important. Thank you. It's been great fun playing around in your world for a little while, and I look forward to many, many more years of it. Cheers. Method Cup Classique Sparkling Wine number 3. I just mentioned Jonathan Grieve at Avondale. I had a clip up with him a little earlier on in the year. I did an interview with him in a car park in Bryanston. It wasn't the most glorious location we've ever had, but the wine more than made up for it and continues to do so. Now, the Avondale guys are very, very serious about environmentally friendly, green, good living type wine. Everything on the farm is made with the environment in mind. They only wear Hessian sacks, they only eat lentils, they run around throwing compost in the air, and the end result is one that you can drink and feel better about yourself and the world in doing so. And I mentioned Jonathan's one of the guys who'd supported the industry and who'd supported Dan Really Likes Wine. He's known for his massive hat, but also known for some terrific wine. There's Armilla Blanc de Blanc amongst them. A little different to the Kleine Zalze version. This is a little sharper, a little more citrus to it, slightly spikier as you drink it, but enormously refreshing, and another great one to have as we build into summer, and another great bottle of which to thank some of the other people in the wine industry. And I've had a whole lot of people who have been really, really generous in terms of sending me wine, not with any sense of obligation, just try it, see what you think, and if it works out and it can fit into the show, that's fantastic, but it's completely up to you. The Manleys have been terrific, Ian and Lee's, they've sent loads and loads of stuff my way, so big thank you to them, got plenty of it. The guys at Meridian have also been terrific, Gavin in between his 9 rounds of golf a week, and also had stuff from a range of other people around the country, and plenty of wine sent up by the Annie Else team as well. Andrew Harris has been terrific, so a big thank you to them as well. We've got a really good PR industry in South Africa, spreading the gospel of South African wine and getting more understanding of it out there. So to all of you who have sent some wine the way of Dan Really Likes Wine, Dan really does like wine, and he particularly likes getting it from all of you, so thank you. And then our 4th round of celebrations, and this time it's Allée Bleu, a little estate that stands sentry on the road into Franschhoek. First time I went out there was for a wine launch. Dagmar Schumacher, who for so many years has worked in the broader food and wine industry, had invited me along, and I particularly remember it for the host for the day arriving by helicopter, Joanne Strauss, stepping very elegantly out of a chopper, and despite the rotors arriving completely unruffled and taking to the podium to look after us for the day. I've been out to Allée Bleu several times since. I looked at it as a possible wedding destination before we settled on Backsburg for the Nickel nuptials. But I've always enjoyed heading out there. They've got a lovely little restaurant. It's a fun place to go and visit. And they also have a habit of making some rather nice wine. Whoa. And that is why I always open Cab Classique or champagne with a tea towel, because you never know when your bottle is feeling particularly boisterous. Now you saw the bubbles come out there, you also saw that little wisp of gas, that breath on a cold winter's morning. It's actually just a little bit of gas. If you look very closely inside the bottle, there's a tiny cloud. When you open it, the decompression out comes the gas, and that's why you see that little whisper of smoke when you open a bottle of Cap Classique, or if you can't find any Cap Classique and have to make do with the French stuff instead, then champagne. And this, the 2013 Brut from the guys out at Allée Bleu, to wrap up a week of celebration. Now that's another burst of fresh loveliness, a little bit more biscuity than the preceding Cap Classique, but again, that dryness mixed with the bubbles just shouts out celebrate, and that's what we're doing this week. 1 year on from Dan Really Likes Wine. We've got some exciting stuff in the pipeline over the next few months, so do keep an eye on developments. But the last bottle gives me a last chance to say a final couple of thank yous. One is to my darling wife Dimitra, who very kindly finishes off most of the wine that we don't drink, but also puts up with her husband's mild obsession with wine and travels thereof. And then to the wine mad genius behind the camera, who puts Dan Really Likes Wine together every week. He knows far more about wine than I do, makes his own wine, and has a great deal of fun editing the little gems, at least from a visual perspective, that you see every week. So Stefanos Rabi, better known for his work on Boursucafro and occasionally on the Dan Nicholl Show, also the quiet genius behind Dan Really Likes Wine. So cheers, Stefanos, and cheers, I think most importantly, to everybody who's watched the show over the year to date. Send us through some thoughts if you'd like. We're getting 7,000-8,000 people watching a week on our Facebook page and a couple on YouTube as well. But it's lovely to get some feedback. It's lovely to hear what you think. And hopefully from this, you're discovering a little more about South African wine, enjoying a little more, and celebrating and supporting what I think is one of our finest industries. 1 year on, thanks for the support. Here's to another year and more. Cheers.